comment is to Ben, and Bill or Elliot, correct me if I'm wrong, but for these last two reports, we really struggled whether the audience should be CEOs or boards. And I think for the last two reports, we decided to focus on on boards as a way to get to CEOs, because the CEO tenure these days is a lot shorter than it was in the past. So I don't think there's a real difference. It's just that our strategy was that if you want to get to the CEO, you need all of these principles reinforced by boards. Am I reasonably correct on that, Elliot, Bill? And then here's a question that hasn't come up, although Ben Heineman alluded to it when he's talked about training the right kind of people. And I want to ask Bill Donaldson if he wants to comment. Bill, you founded a business school, the Yale School of Management. And Judy, you went there, if I recall.
It wasn't my dean, however, I just want to make that perfect.
And this hasn't really come up, what about the next generation of corporate leaders? What, if anything, should we be doing to try and get to people before they get to the C-suite, so that we're not always trying to clean up after the problem? So Bill, I don't know if you want to comment on this or anything that's been said so far.
I could go on for a long, long time about what sort of people we're looking for, but what to me, I'm going to not take your assignment directly, but I'm going to make a comment on what the panel is. I think the biggest failing in the compensation area is determining exactly what it is that you're compensating for. We are all tied into earnings per share, to return on investment, to all the measures, which we don't measure the intangible. We don't measure what it is that management does that makes it a great corporation, that gives it a soul. And that's what I was masquerading as a dean and a professor, tried to talk to our students about. Your role is not just the number, but your role is embedding a DNA into your corporation that will go on and on and on.
Do you think there are companies that are doing this particularly well?
I'm sorry?
Do you think there are companies that are doing this particularly well?
I don't think they're doing it particularly well. And I think one of the reasons they're not is that people throw up their hands and say, we can't measure that.
It's too hard.
How do we measure? We can measure EPS and all that sort of stuff, but how do we measure what I'm talking about? I submit that you can set down goals here and then measure movement toward those goals. I'll shut up.
I think it's a great question, because I think one of the interesting things about the report is it didn't talk about education on business and society issues. And I think we can start with the business schools. I have the good fortune or misfortune of being at a university where I teach in law schools, the public policy school and the business school. I would say the business and society issues are not well treated at the Harvard Business School. Yale had a great tradition that you started of trying to combine the perspectives in the students and succeeded very well. I think the finance quants until the crisis have basically monopolized the intellectual environment at the business schools, and they do not focus on these kinds of things. I don't think the businesses do a good job in management development on business and society issues. GE Crotonville, which is a high-quality business school, doesn't do a good enough job. I would give myself about a C in my ability to change the curriculum there. So I think this question, and it goes back to the kinds of CEOs that are being chosen, they are not getting the kind of training on the kinds of issues which are discussed in the report, starting with business school, going on into corporate schools, and certainly in terms of management development. Right. I think this is a huge issue, and I know it's one that Judy cares a lot about.
Judy, I would add that this is a problem also on the investor side, that people making investment decisions are quantitative in their thinking, exclusively quantitative. They don't know how to factor in these other issues into their models, and they're not interested in it either. And they're trained in a very narrow way, and they think narrowly. That's why I think it is the role of the board of directors to break the short-term cycle ultimately. The board of directors is in the position of telling the corporation and the CEO, telling the corporation through the CEO, that other values must be asserted in addition to next quarter's earnings. And this vicious cycle that we've been in and that we've been contemplating for nearly a decade now, and one that we're very frustrated by, of everybody being performance-driven and it's ultimately short-term, we have to break that, and I think it starts with boards of directors of corporations.